Hey, delighted to say, back on my channel today, I have the Member of Parliament for Ipswich, Tom Hunt. Tom, first of all, welcome back to my channel.
Good to be back.
Yeah, now look, I wanted to speak to you today because you are on the Education Committee who have released a very important report today, The Forgotten, How White Working Class Pupils Have Been Let Down. Tom, for those who haven't read the report, please can you give the background to it?
Well, a decision was made to launch this inquiry when some pretty concerning statistics came to light about the performance of white working class pupils at school compared with other, to make clear that what we mean here is white pupils who are eligible for free school meals, and some statistics came to light about their performances both at GCSE but also access to university compared to other disadvantaged groups. So, other groups of pupils who non-white who are eligible also for free school meals. And there was this huge sort of disparity, which is just a bit perplexing. So this inquiry was about trying to get to the nub of some of these issues about why is it that there's this kind of disparity there. And the reality is it's an incredibly complex matter, and there's lots of different issues, and it's an 80 page long report. But I mean, I think all of us feel as though it was right to look at this issue, and we almost got a sense from some people that we ought not to be looking at this issue, and somehow it's okay to talk about every other disadvantaged group, but somehow not the particular group that we were looking at, which almost made me more determined for us to look into it properly.
Now, the report lays out that our inquiry has shown that poor white pupils are far from privileged in education. I believe only 16% of white working class girls and boys go to university. Tom, what are your thoughts as to why this level of attainment is so poor?
Well, I think what I would say about this university stat is I think it's an interesting stat, and I think it's indicative of a problem. But I would say, in terms of challenging this, we shouldn't sort of overreact here, because I actually think that as a society we're probably sending too many people to university as it is. So I don't want, if it's a choice between, I wouldn't want us to be sort of hitting a target by trying to encourage one of these peoples to go to, a university on a course which might not help them get a good job, as opposed to a good quality apprenticeship. So, but I do think that stat about university access is still indicative of the problem, though. So it was. I think it's, and we also look at sort of like GCSE performance as well, and I think 18% of white underprivileged kids get grade 4 or above in English and maths, and it's 23% for the overall average. So again, on that metrics as well, they're falling behind. I think there's one of the things we came across is this thing, I think it was called the immigrant paradigm. I think it was referred to a couple of times by people giving evidence, which is that actually in lots of new sort of within sort of new immigrant communities, they're very positive about education, and they very much see it as being the kind of platform for advancing, and that's quite positive. And often these communities have quite a lot of social capital, and in fact we got some written evidence from the Muslim community about the role of the mosque within the local community and how it actually has feed-through benefits in terms of academic performance. But within the the white working class communities, I think we came across there could be some issues to do with bad experience with education, and intergenerational, a kind of perception of education that it's not necessarily in school, is not necessarily the key platform to get on, and perhaps a lack of engagement as a result of that. I think some of that has got to do with a kind of curriculum that hasn't been balanced enough and has been overly focused on just university and not good quality apprenticeships. But I think that's a factor. But I think that another issue that came up was this issue to do with white privilege, and that's got a lot of attention in the media today, which I guess was predictable because of the sort of type of issue it is, and ostensibly it's why the Labour MPs voted against the entire report, or the report in its entirety. So a report dedicated to trying to help and support some of the most disadvantaged young people in the country, the Labour Party has voted against because of and they say because of this section on white privilege, which I absolutely defend. I think it should have been in there. It's right to be in there, and it came off the back of a session we had with Barnardo's, where we established that the charity Barnardo's had issued a guide called white privilege, a guide to parents, and it issued this report to huge numbers of families of which are working, many of whom are white underprivileged families, and then we've also had the Religious Education Association coming out saying that white privilege as a term should be promoted also to very sort of young pupils, and we all found this very concerning, and we fought it with the whole agenda associated with white privilege was not helpful for the peoples that we were looking at, because it does seem that there is a bit of an industry to support the others, virtually nothing for the group of which we were looking at. And also, if you're being, I think the last thing you need when you've got enough challenges in your life, poverty, socioeconomic disadvantage, is to be force-fed this kind of woke white privilege nonsense. I think it's the last thing you want. I think it's alienating for many young white kids. And I think it's, frankly, we should be motivated equally about trying to tackle poverty in white communities as we are in any other community, and it's and I think that they should be looked at in the same way as other groups. I don't see why they should be looked at less, and honestly, some of the Labour MPs on the committee, it was almost as though, even though the stats are there and the stats are impossible to argue with, it was almost like they were determined for this sort of not to be an issue. They were almost pretending like it wasn't an issue. They prefer to sweep it under the carpet. They prefer to not talk about some of the causes here. They're perfectly happy to talk about other disadvantaged groups, quite rightly, but for some reason there seems to be a difference when it comes to white underprivileged kids, and somehow it's wrong to look into specific factors as to why they may not maybe falling behind other groups.
Before we get on to the Labour Party's increasingly bizarre behaviour, I just want to, because I've actually gone through this, I know that a lot of the people commenting on this today, as we've seen with other reports, won't have actually bothered reading any of it before they attack it. But one of the key points I picked up here is that you said in the report, having access to high quality early years provision helps disadvantaged children, including white working class children. Maintained nursery schools deliver consistently high outcomes for disadvantaged pupils, but they face financial difficulties. Tom, what are a couple of the conclusions you're taking away in terms of what can be done moving forward to improve the situation, to improve outcomes?
I think one of the things that we've pushed for is a kind of family hubs. I mean, we're actually introducing family hubs in Suffolk, which I welcome, but they are essentially from right from birth up until the age of 19, and they are a kind of one-stop shop for really all services to do with young people, and they're embedded. The aspiration is for them to be embedded within the community. So for every area to have a good quality family hub, which is a place where parents can go and get the information that they need, and the idea is, I think, it promotes more participation from all parents in the education of their children. So I think that's quite important. I think that's one of the key findings we've got. I mean, obviously, also looking at funding, I think there's a geographical aspect here that actually the kids in question are clustered in particular parts of the country, which don't always do well from funding agreements. And I know that in Suffolk, we're one of the worst funded local education authorities in the country, for example, whereas I think more sort of metropolitan areas tend to be better funded. So I think trying to address that was also, a key finding. But I think we need to, we're talking about, we also said that we should be more focused on skills and apprenticeships. The English baccalaureate should be amended so that it has something like DT in there as a composite of getting the English baccalaureate, starting careers advice earlier, and actually promoting from a really early age the sense that there's multiple pathways. And yes, there's an academic pathway, and if you want to go down that route, then we're going to back you, and it could well be that is the best route for you, and there's no reason why it shouldn't be, and you could go and get good A levels and go to a good university, but actually you shouldn't feel forced and pressured to go down that route. And there's a perfectly good other alternate route which involves you getting again from a much earlier age a bit of an understanding as to the opportunities that apprenticeships can provide, getting some of those skills earlier on, and being aware of careers opportunities in your area. So and I think at that point education will become a bit more relevant to lots of young people, because I think if you're in an area and you look at school and think, well, it's all totally academic and it's all just, I don't want to go to university, and it seems to only be about eventually getting us to university. But I think actually if you look at your local school and you begin to see getting those core skills early on as a kind of route and a pathway to then getting a good high skilled job in your local area, I think you might be more likely to engage. And I think actually more parents probably be more likely to think, actually this is really important that, I don't know, Jimmy or Jill engages and everything else. But I think but I think also, just making sure that all schools and all any organisation involved in supporting disadvantaged children focuses on disadvantage and doesn't spend time doesn't waste time and money on trying to push kind of woke concepts like white privilege. I think that would be a good thing, because one of the things that came through was that a lot of white underprivileged children and families aren't aware of their own disadvantage. Well, I wonder why. When they have all this white privilege sort of stuff going on, and the left say they'll continue to support this use of the concept white privilege, and they'll say, oh, well, by white privilege, we don't mean that you're privileged in terms of your socioeconomic position. What we're saying is that you're privileged in terms of, I was like, okay, all right, okay, so you have a convoluted understanding of what you may mean by white privilege, but expect everybody else to kind of necessarily get that, really? I don't know. I think, people will interpret white privilege as a concept as they'll interpret it. And I think it's potentially damaging and alienating for millions of people, and it needs to stop. And I actually, in terms of the recommendations in the report, I wanted them to be sort of even more robust, actually. But we were, we sort of, I kind of thought, well, I've got 80%, 90% of what I want in the report. So I'm gonna be magnanimous, but I mean, but there are some people who say that we can't actually tell schools that they can't promote white privilege, and to do so would be in breach of the European Convention of Human Rights, because it curtails free speech. Really? So I'm pretty sure, like, if you found out a school was promoting white supremacy, like, clearly that would be stopped, wouldn't it? Like, I'm pretty sure that no one would suggest that couldn't and shouldn't be stopped. It would do immediately. So I think the notion that if, as a committee, you deem something to be damaging to a vulnerable group of young people, then of course, the government of the day has a power to do something about that. So I think that there has been some sort of slight pushback from certain quarters with regards to some of the recommendations we've been looking to make in this select committee report.
Now, just to give the context to this, the latest YouGov poll in terms of working class Brits shows now that 49% intend to vote Conservative, just 28% intend to vote Labour. So the Tories now have a 21-point lead with working class Brits over the Labour Party. And isn't it astonishing that amid that backdrop, amid that context, amid claims from Keir Starmer that he's actually listening to the British public, which he clearly isn't, you have, as you set out earlier, Tom, Labour MPs going against this report. Can you just set out to people who aren't aware of the process, in what way have Labour MPs opposed and voted against this report?
Well, so as a committee, there's 11 members on the committee, but the chair is Conservative chair Robert Halford. He doesn't actually vote on the key votes. He sort of doesn't vote unless it's like a tie. The chair doesn't actually cast a vote. I mean, they're heavily involved in drawing up the report, but they don't. It's a bizarre thing where they don't actually. So when what happened is 6 Conservative MPs voted, including myself, voted to support this report, but 4 Labour members of Parliament voted against the report. And to make this clear, this is an 80-page report, about 2 pages of which were to do with white privilege, and the Labour Party voted against the report in its entirety. So, as I say, a report dedicated to supporting the most vulnerable and disadvantaged white working class kids, and the Labour Party have voted against that report. And actually, there's a huge amount in that report which is pretty uncontroversial, good ideas about wanting to help. And what is really annoying is this, this report makes absolutely clear at the start that we are conscious of the fact that there are other groups, of kids who are disadvantaged in all manner of different ways. And for example, in the inquiry, we found out that Black Caribbean youngsters, their dropout rate at university is far higher than anybody else. They're more likely to be expelled at school. And actually, when it comes to labour market access, sometimes, it's definitely not sort of white young people who are doing the worst in terms of labour market access. So there's a whole load of other issues that as a committee we will look at in time. And we're not saying we're not going to look at those issues. We are. We were just saying that this time we're going to look at this group. And some members of the Labour Party seem to have an issue with that.
And finally, Tom, what do you think that says about the state of the current Labour Party in 2021?
Well, I think yet more evidence that the Labour Party ceased to represent the sort of working classes in this country. I don't see that. I think that, and I think so much damage has been done to the Labour brand with the working classes that I really don't know how the Labour Party get them back. Actually, I think what we're seeing at the moment is quite a deep realignment in British politics, and actually, I think even if both parties wanted to try and change that, I think it's probably too late.
Tom Hunt, fascinating. Thanks for coming back on my channel, and we'll speak again soon.
Cheers. Bye.